Hello everyone, welcome back to another video in our third unit on EDA. In the previous video, we talked about bar charts in Altair and how to get aggregated data. So for instance, we took the median here. And in this video, we're going to talk about something called rectangle charts and then a little bit later, multi-view charts. So to get started, I have Altair and Seaborn imported. I also have the miles per gallon dataset loaded as DF. And the first exercise is saying, make a rectangle chart using MarkRect with model year along the x-axis. And we have, a bunch of specifications. I won't read them all because I will confuse myself. So let's do it one piece at a time. I'm going to do alt.chart, df per data frame, and then we want mark_rect for rectangle, dot encode. And it's saying model year along the x-axis. So let's do it. X equals model_year. Cylinders along the y-axis. So then y equals cylinders. And with the rectangles colored by count. So count is not a part of DF. Count is something from Altair. And what this does is it's going to look in this case at the model year in cylinders and say, well, how many cars in the data set have the given model year and the given number of cylinders? So kind of model year, this makes sense to count it as ordinal or to encode it as ordinal, right? And then the same thing for number of cylinders. So I'm going to do ordinal encoding for both of those. And we'll wait for this to run. But here it is. So here the colors, the darker the color means the more cars in the data set that meet the given specifications. So if I had to guess, I'd say in DF, there are the most number of cars from the year 82 with 4 cylinders. So if we're looking at these model year cylinder pairs. We could also use a tooltip just to confirm. So we could say, let's do tooltip. And let's have this be count. So then looking here, we can mouse over and we see count of records is 28, and that's the maximum here as well. Versus something like here, there's one car that's from the year 1972 with 3 cylinders. So that's the first part. Second part is saying, make a text chart using mark text with the same parameters as above, but remove the color encoding and add a text encoding based on count. So again, this is going to be very similar. Whoops. So let's go up here. So I'm going to change this to mark text. We're going to remove the color encoding. I'll also remove the tooltip. And we're instead going to have text encoding, and this is going to be count. And here it is. So maybe this looks a little strange right now, but remember, this is the values that were represented above here. So the tooltip values, we can see it's 28, 21, 25, and those are the same values here. So this looks a little strange now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give a name to this chart. I'm going to call it C1. And if I just run this, it's going to hide the chart from me, but to see it again, I can just type C1. Similarly, I'm going to call this chart C2. And then what we can do is layer these two charts together. So for instance, I can do C1 plus C2. And we can see here, it basically replaces the tooltip feature that we had. So instead of having to mouse over everything, I can just look at the numbers. And the plus is a shorthand for using alt.layer. So if I wanted to do that instead, I could say alt.layer and then pass C1, C2. And we can see here we get the same chart. So that's what I wanted to show you for a mark rectangle. The last part here is saying make a facet chart. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to make a bunch of different charts split by some parameter. So we're going to use horsepower for the x coordinate, miles per gallon for the y coordinate, cylinders for the color with nominal data encoding, and then we're going to divide the data according to the number of cylinders. So basically, we're going to split the charts so that each chart represents just one category of cylinders. So for instance, 3 cylinders, 4 cylinders, and so on. So I'm going to make this using a scatter chart. So I'm going to say alt.chart. This is going to be df, then it's going to be .mark _, let's do circle, .encode. All right, so we want horsepower for the x coordinate. Then we want miles per gallon for the y coordinate. And I'm going to do it with ordinal encoding. Cylinders for color, so color equals cylinders, and it says to do nominal encoding. And let's see, and then we want to, so I'll just run it like this, and then I'll show you how to divide it. So notice here along the y-axis, we have miles per gallon. And let's see, maybe I feel like I shouldn't have done this as ordinal. Let's leave it as quantitative because it's just splitting it up too much. So there's fractional values. So, okay, notice here we have kind of these distinct buckets of cylinders. Now what I'm going to do is generate a chart for each kind of category of cylinders. So I'm going to come here, and super straightforward. The way you do it is if I want each chart to be in its own row, I say row equals and then cylinders. So we can see here we have 3 cylinders. Here's miles per gallon, and remember along the x-axis we have horsepower. So for instance, let's say I want to compare horsepower across cylinders. Well then it makes sense to kind of have these charts stacked on top of each other because for instance I can draw a vertical line and I can see, okay, to the left of this line I have all of the 3 cylinders, and then if I continue to the 4 cylinders, they're also all to the left of that line. Let's go to 5 cylinders, all to the left of that line. Now 6, we have kind of division. 8, the majority are to the right, so it's kind of like a way of gathering some data about the relationship between horsepower and the number of cylinders. If instead I wanted to split it into columns instead, well, instead of row, you would just say column. So for instance, instead of row, column, and we'll wait for the chart. But now we can see, so we can compare miles per gallon with number of cylinders instead. Oops. All right. I think this is a good place to end the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.